My next guest is the first woman and longest-serving Secretary of Homeland Security to date. She's firsthand knowledge of pandemic response, as she was serving as Secretary when H1N1 was declared a pandemic. She's also worked to ensure the U.S. was more prepared to combat cyber threats, and that's very much in the news today. Governor, Madam President, Secretary Napolitano, it's great to see you again. It's been, fun to watch, all of these things unfold and say, I know we're going to talk to you so you can just sort of fix all these things. I should also mention that Janet Napolitano is once you're a cabinet secretary, once you're a governor, once you run a, big university, guess what's next? Being a board member of Zoom. We're in the era of COVID and we're in the era of Zoom. And I'm just sort of interested as we talk about IT, talk about how we have fun, how we educate ourselves, how we maintain our national security. I'd like to get a picture from you of the top of line of, what should we be worried about as we genuinely move into this digital space?
Well, what's been interesting during this most recent pandemic is the expansion of technologies that we had available before the pandemic. But then as we had to go into shelter in place and the like, the expansion of the utility of those technologies. As you mentioned, I just recently went on the board of Zoom. Last February, I think Zoom had maybe 30 million users, and within a month or two, it had 300 million. And Zoom became a verb. You've kind of made it as a company when you're a verb. But think about what Zoom has enabled us to do. It's enabled families to stay in touch with each other and friends. It's enabled our schools to continue providing education to students, a service that Zoom offers public schools for free. It's enabled universities to keep delivering educational content. The University of California that I recently was president of is the largest public research university in the country. And we turned on a dime when we had to shut down the campuses so that our students could continue taking classes and making progress towards their degrees. Now, we look forward to the time when the campuses can reopen because there are a lot of benefits for students from being on a residential campus beyond only the delivery of educational material. But nonetheless, progress did not stop during the pandemic. And that's because we had a pre-existing technology platform that was scalable and was easy to use. And so that's where our continued investment in new types of technologies and new innovations will stand us in such good stead as we move into the future.
Janet, let me ask you a question. We've just maybe this isn't as magical as I think, but we just had Jessica Rosenworcel of the FCC, Senator Tim Scott, a Republican from South Carolina. I've interviewed Suzanne DelBene, who's going to join us shortly, from the House of Representatives in Washington State, and all of them are saying, look, connect everybody. Jessica's saying we have universal water connection, universal energy connection. We have to have universal broadband connection. You've had a foot in so many different corners of the private sector and in the public sector. Is that doable?
Yes, it is doable and it's necessary. It's an investment. It's a major infrastructure investment for the country. But just as decades ago, we made the investment to have an interstate highway system to connect us through transportation, we now need universal broadband to connect us with information. So I would put that at really near the top, if not at the top of my infrastructure list.
Another thing that happened today, and I tell people it's on the website, I'm not flacking for them, although they sponsor it, but I think it's a very important brief, is the Information Technology Industry Council has a new set of proposals that it has put on its website, issued and shared with the Biden administration today about what it sees out there. Really, I mean, it's sort of dense, a lot of different policy proposals, but a lot of them have to do with both the cyber literacy in government, critical infrastructure, cyber security, not only, generating new frameworks, but getting, people who are trained and know this area well. We've just had hacks of the Treasury Department, NTIA at the Commerce Department. You were Secretary of Homeland Security, and you know this well. I just love to get, what would be the Janet Napolitano fix to our cybersecurity problems in government? I can't believe the Treasury Department was hacked, but it was hacked, allegedly by Russian hackers.
So was the Department of Homeland Security, and I'm sure that there's a lot of reverse engineering going on to get to what could have been done to prevent that hack or to detect it much earlier. But what the government really needs is a cadre of cybersecurity experts. At the University of California, we're talking about what we can do to train cyber professionals for the public sector. The private sector, of course, outcompetes the public sector on the salary side, but many students have an urge to help the public and to help our country meet its greatest challenges. We want to take advantage of that. But this is going to require intentionality and a partnership between the government and our nation's universities.
Another area you know well is fundraising. You also know the IT and high-tech sector out there real well. One of the complaints about particularly a lot of Bay Area companies, West companies, is their commitment to, women in leadership, women in STEM, communities of color in leadership, communities of color in STEM. Do you think they're finally getting the picture that they need to move that to create something Jessica Rosenworcel raised, also Tim Scott raised, that I'm interested in whether or not the folks that you deal with understand the importance of inclusion when it comes to IT?
The people I deal with certainly understand it and are working on it. And in addition, in California, they've passed laws requiring companies of certain sizes to have a certain number of women and people of color on their boards of directors, which is another area of leadership that's sorely needed. So progress will be made. Progress needs to be speeded up. It's taking too long. Now that we've recognized this problem, we've just got to dive in and fix it. And I am convinced there are women and people of color across the country who have the necessary skills already. We need to identify them, find them, hire them, and promote them.
Where are you on America's current state with regards to talented, bright minds that live in other countries that might want to go to school here, that might want to work in companies here, looking at our immigration policies, which, I don't think it's would be an overstatement to say that there's a bit of a giant speed bump that's put in place of immigrants coming into this America there. Where are you? Do you think any of that needs to be rolled back?
Oh, absolutely. Until the Trump administration, the United States was really the talent magnet for the world. We have the best system of higher education in the world, and talented students from other countries flocked here to be educated, and then many stayed, and they started their own companies, they created jobs, they helped the United States be the innovation leader for the planet. By putting up lots of barriers to getting visas, to being able to stay after you get your degree, and the like. We, for the first time in decades, saw the number of international students and international student applicants decrease over the period of the Trump administration. I anticipate that the Biden administration not only will recognize that, but will roll back those barriers, again, for the United States to be a talent magnet.
When I tell my viewers, when Secretary Napolitano, when you left town, when you left the HHS position, the Homeland Security position, I was in a small group of people that met with you, and one of the things I didn't know is that you were the originator, the creator of the Trusted Traveler program. So I know it's going to be a little left outfield, but Trusted Traveler has changed, at that time, during a moment of high stress, during a moment of doubt in institutions and security and safety. If you think about it today, we're sort of back in that place. Are there any Janet Napolitano bank shots like that, to kind of figure out how we use ways to sort of, look at trust, to, create empathy, to get people to work together on problem solving again? We're at a, time of division and also an inflection point with the new administration coming in. What would be some of the Napolitano bank shots you would recommend?
Well, one of them we just talked about, which was going back and rolling back some of the Trump administration moves that I think, had Congress been able to intervene in a timely way, maybe they would have. What I sense is a hunger, particularly among Republicans in the Senate, to try to create a new spirit of working together to get things done. I was so encouraged by the remarks of Senator Scott just a moment ago. But the Senate for 4 years, basically all they've done is confirm judges. They haven't really worked on substantive legislation, I guess, other than the tax cut. The tax cut and judges, I think, would be the only thing they could point to for 4 years. I mean, come on. This country has issues with respect to climate and climate change, energy sustainability. We have lots of issues with our immigration system, with inequality in our country and income inequality. So I think, I don't know if you would call it a bank shot, but I think we need to line up some of these major problems that our country has and put them on the agenda.
Let me squeeze in one last question, and we've got a question from the audience for you. The question I have is, we all of these questions, all of these issues, we look at IT, we look at talent, we look at tech, they're both domestic and of huge consequence here. They're also international, and the talent is international. And one of the arenas that's clearly heating up, and there's almost a bipartisan consensus around it, is you got to worry about China and technology. How do you square technology, transnational company, without dividing the world and ending up with competing standards and, a kind of, a new Cold War, if you will, with China? Essentially, is there a constructive engagement path where China's worst behaviors can be rolled back without recreating all the worst aspects of a previous Cold War?
Well, I think China is, a major problem set for the United States and for the world generally. Take 5G. We don't want to end up in a planet where there are two basic systems for communications to transverse. So I think it begins with what I would call constructive engagement, identifying some areas where China and the United States would both benefit from a joint approach. But China's tough. The Chinese Communist Party is very far from an open democratic society. So, but we can't ignore them, and we shouldn't address them or deal with them in a way that creates a new Cold War, because the Cold War was a terrible time for countries all over the world. So we need to find a way to engage.
Well, thank you. David, we've got a question from David. So, David?
My name is David Van Horn. I'm a planning and development consultant, now semi-retired and living in Florida. My question is, how will decreasing demand for commercial office space be influenced by the increasing use of technologies such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams? Thank you.
Seems perfectly approached. Is there a world for corporate, David asked a great question, which is, are we going to live in a very different way even after COVID's gone? Have we learned new patterns that may not depend upon us all being down, at 16th and K Street?
Well, I think we have, both in terms of office space, but in terms of business travel. And I think there will be major impacts in both of those areas that continue past the pandemic. In terms of office space, what I envision happening is that there will still be a demand for office space, but not as much. Many companies will go to a hybrid model where employees need to be in office, maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and then working from home or another location for the remainder of the week. So they won't need as much office space. So that's going to change the development market, no doubt.
Well, Janet Napolitano, former president of the University of California, governor of Arizona, secretary of Homeland Security, and now board member of Zoom. And I have to tell you, I hope I don't get him in trouble with this. Bob Zoellick, former U.S. Trade Representative, is on the board of Twitter, but he's not a big tweeter. The question: Are you going to be a big Zoomer?
I think I've been on Zoom, 12 hours a day since March.
Well, great.
I'm absolutely a Zoomer.
Well, Secretary Napolitano, thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much.